Welcome to Coffee and Pizza. I hope you can enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Pizza. And from today, we have a very special guest, Jason Haddix. And with your permission, Haddix, or Mr. Jason, before to start this episode, I want to give special thanks to Casey because he is the guilty about we are here today. And I say to Casey, I want to know one of my idols. In this case, it's you, Jason. And Casey say, okay, I will try to contact him to being here to the podcast. And then thank you very much, Casey. And thank you very much, Jason, for staying here with us. And pleasure, man. Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Casey's awesome. He's a good friend and co-worker of the past. So yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes we are one of the things of this podcast is try to bring the human side. And one of the beautiful things, in my point of view, after know him, is not only the technical and the professional stuff. It's like how incredible human he is. And it's what is my experience. Then after that, I know you a little bit, but if someone don't know you, can you introduce you a little bit? Can you give me like
Yeah.
3 highlights of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jason Haddix. I've been in offensive security and cybersecurity for about 20 years now. So since I was around 20 years old, I've done a lot of presentations and research and methodology development in the offensive security world, meaning like bug bounty hunting, pen testing, stuff like that. So you probably have run across some of my work at those conferences or when they publish papers and stuff like that. And now I run my own consultancy, which is called Arcanum, and we do training and those types of services, pen testing, ethical hacking, things like that. So I would say the highlights of my life, honestly. It's I'm a dad, so I have 3 kids. So each one of those wonderful little people has been, one of the best parts of my life. I had my first daughter when I was 23, and she is now almost ready to go off into college. She'll, 1 or 2 more years, and she'll be off to college. So I'm sweating that pretty bad because we're best friends, and she's going to be out of the house. So, um, I think that there's just overall, I think my career is just a highlight. I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about some hacking stories on the podcast, but I think I've been very blessed to find this career that I both love and am decently good at. And so I think that not everybody is that lucky, right? To find something that they care about and they get to earn a living from and they feel good about. And so I am just incredibly grateful for being in cybersecurity. And then, I'd probably say my wife, meeting my wife and, when I was in my 30s and she came into the picture after I had my kids with a previous person. And she just came in and she's the best friend and the best mother. And, those are the kind of highlights of my life, I think.
Things of the life finally is this, because we can be better hackers, worse hackers, but one of the things I learned after almost 20 years, like you, Jason, is we are continuous learning. And one of the beautiful things, at least when we leave this world, is someday when we do it, I believe that's the important thing we bring with us. Then congrats for be that and congrats for your incredible family. But same you mentioned before, here we are talking a little bit about hacking and about your life, and I believe that's interesting from the point of view of perspective of many people. And one of the things always I make this question most of the time to the guest is from where are you from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from the US. I grew up in Southern California. So in a town called Santa Barbara. Beautiful town. My parents were lucky enough to I'm third generation Mexican. And so my grandmother and my grandfather came from Mexico. And so yeah, so we had a house in developing Southern California for our family. Kind of lived there for a long time until I got to my 30s, and then in the last 5 years, I've been in Colorado. We moved from California to Colorado, and I am in the southern Denver area now, which I like a lot. We have we uprooted the family and came out here, and it's been a good run out here. So yeah. I do miss the beach a little bit, but I'm more of a basement guy, you know. Like I'm in front of my computer a lot, and even the outdoor activities I have are not beach related. My wife is a big beach person. She played volleyball in college and after college, and so she's a big beach person. She misses it more than I do.
Because I come from I come from a small country, from living near to the beach, and sometimes I am living now in Madrid. Madrid is the center of Spain,
Mhm.
and I miss sometimes the beach, and
Yeah.
that's why I make you this question.
Yep. Yeah.
On the other hand, something and also I know Santa Barbara. I was there in 2025, no, 2015, 2015, and it's very beautiful city. I really, really like Santa Barbara. It's a very nice place. At least you are not from Compton, right?
No, yeah, we're my dad grew up in LA, and so yeah, he did. He lived close to Compton actually in LA, but never me. I was always in Santa Barbara and then now Colorado. So
Then one of the things when I was there in California is like, I know many, I speak Spanish. That means like many people is shocked when they see someone like me, white face and like Western side, and speak Spanish. The people was thinking like, this is like something like funny or something like this. Someone have a high coming somewhere and something like that, but because it's different, right? But one of the things I learned that I have some people don't speak English there. It was incredible for me. I found some people, Mexican people, don't speak English, living there for 20 years, 20, 25, 30 years, and still speaking Spanish. That's sick. And in other hand, one of the things I found there, like some second generation, like you, because I believe you are second generation, right? Doesn't
yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't speak Spanish. And
yeah,
that's your case. You don't speak Spanish.
that's that's my case. I can understand a little bit of Spanish because it was around my house, but there was a time when I feel like Mexican Americans were immigrating to the U.S. and there was a short period where they were kind of afraid of their culture and bringing it to America, and so they wouldn't speak. They would like actively not try to speak Spanish, and make sure that their kids grew up speaking English without an accent so that they could assimilate better. And I think that that's kind of where my grandma was when I remember her, just kind of like helping raise me with my mom. She definitely wanted us just to be like everybody else in America, get every chance that we could get. And so she really didn't push the speaking Spanish on us, and so I never really learned. Now I took Spanish in school, um, and I did hear it from a lot from my uncles and aunts, and like my grandpa too. He was kind of the opposite, but yeah, I mean, I like when people are around, I can understand somewhat of what they're saying, but I can't speak it myself. So
But incredible you bring this over the table, because it was something I want to bring it, because something I found when I was there, like the people have this was a little bit shamed, but today's thing is changing. I don't know if it's
it
for the
is changing.
music or
Yeah,
something like that,
yeah.
but I know many Americans trying to learn Spanish,
Hmm.
and something I think you really really enjoy is Mexican food, because it's incredible.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, my ethnicity is I mean is Mexican and then Filipino. So both those cultures have an incredibly great history and food attached to the culture. So yeah, I mean I'm a huge Mexican food fan, huge Filipino food fan. When I see extended relatives, those are the best times because we're just cooking and having a good time. So yeah.
And also, if someone doesn't know, in California, you have incredible Mexican food, very, very good. One of the things I enjoy a lot is tacos and these kind of things.
Oh yeah. Yeah, tacos and burritos in Southern California are very authentic, very good, very there's a lot of street food culture still in the LA area, in the greater LA area, like all in Southern California. So you have great food trucks, with great food, and that has also worked its way up into Northern California too. I remember going to Northern California and them having they had this thing called Off the Grid, which was a collection of food trucks that would come, and you could just kind of pick what you wanted and eat wherever. And they had pretty good authentic Mexican food too. So all of California benefits from that.
Okay, we can say a little bit, at least a little bit. We have similar roots because I'm Spanish.
Yeah, yeah.
As you go. Then, in other hand, I bring this because I believe it's interesting. Because when I bring here my guest, one of the things I want to know is how was when you was younger. And in my opinion, because many young people like us, not today, because today we have internet and it's easy for some people, but some people can feel some isolation, can feel some loneliness. And that's something we are having many young people today. And that's why I bring this, because I believe it's important to talk about that and talk how was when you was younger there, because, everyone, if it's difficult for someone from the country, I cannot imagine for someone come from, we can say, immigrant family in that case, no? And how was for you for make friends and about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I had a couple of disadvantages that affected kind of my upbringing. My birthmark was one, so I have my Port Wine birthmark on the side, and and then I've worn glasses my whole life, so I kind of got pigeonholed into very much kind of the nerdy crowd right away. And then the birthmark, that was something I was bullied for, quite a bit when I was younger, and so a lot of people, with hindsight, you can see how those things make you stronger. But when you're in it, it is incredibly hard. So if you're someone who's younger right now, you're in your teens or you're in your 20s, like all I can say is that, like, yeah, it gets better eventually. You build self-confidence if you can get through it and healthily. And there's always a little trauma there too. But yeah, I mean, so I got kind of pushed into the nerdy crowd, which led into computers. And I was just talking with my wife the other day, and I remember my first exposure to computers when I was a kid was my school had this event where everybody would bring books, like maybe one or two or three books from home, and we would bring them to the cafeteria at my school. And so you would get a ticket for each book you brought, and then you could use a ticket to buy a book that other people had brought to the event. And so this book swap was really cool. And I remember one of the first books I saw was an MS-DOS book for Windows 98. And it was sitting on the table, and I was like, that looks like a big fat book about computers. And I think computers are kind of cool because they were, we had Macintoshes at that time in the school, like the old Macs. And I was like, oh, I'll pick up this book. And so, like, I read this giant MS-DOS like volume on how to use the command line before I even owned a computer. And I read it, and I was like, I thought it was cool to read about, um, like, how the command line worked, how programs worked, and there was a little bit of basic in there. And then I didn't really think about it until I was a couple years later when I finally got a computer. My first computer was a 486 that my parents got me for Christmas, and sure enough, it was a Windows box, and I could open up the command line. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember this stuff. I can mess around with the command line. And I think some of the first things that you try to do when you're a youth is game hacking. I think it's a very common thread that a lot of us have. We love video games because, I mean, I could go on a rant around why I love video games. As a nerd, I feel like all of my best friends have come from my groups that I play games with, right? And even real life friends have come from the groups that I play games with. And so it's important to find your tribe and your community. That it's out there. You just got to find it. And don't let anybody tell you that, like, video game friends aren't real friends. I've had video game friends show up for me in very, very hard times. So but yeah, so I started hacking, some games, and back then it was real easy, right? It was like very, very simple text editing. Maybe you had to do some, like, modification of files that were encoded some way. And the hardest stuff back then was memory modification, of which there were very few tools available to even do that. But yeah, so did some game hacking, and then fast forward until I was, like, in college. I had done a bunch of computer work. I was a computer technician. I had done IT in my early college years at Citrix, actually. Um, and then I kind of went down, that dark path you're talking about, right? The kind of dark web stuff, and it was pretty brief, but for a while I was part of before the dark web was even existed on Tor. It was just forums on the internet, right? And so I was part of one called Shadow Crew, and basically, as part of Shadow Crew, it was one of the first and biggest kind of darknet um, forums. And so if you've ever been in the darknet or know anything about it, there's an ecosystem of people that work there. And it's like, it's people who basically create fake credit cards, people who create fake IDs, and then people who hack databases to get the credit card numbers to put on the credit cards, fake credit cards. And so at that point, I was in college, and all my friends were older than me. They were all over 21 here in the States, and I was 20, and I wanted to go out to the bars with them. So I was trying to acquire a fake ID, and I did. I got one from a friend of a friend, and it was really bad. And I got caught really quick at the bars, and they kicked me out of the bars. And so I got mad, and I was like, well, maybe I could do this myself. Maybe I can make a fake ID myself. So I started going to all these forums. I landed on Shadow Crew. I learned really, really well how to make, fake IDs. And then, I was like starting to get into it. And then Shadow Crew got busted by the US Secret Service, and a whole bunch of people got put in jail. And that kind of scared me straight. But I had had a little bit of exposure to the hacker side of the forums, especially at that time, web hacking was just getting off the ground. Like, literally, Rainforest Puppy's first paper about SQL injection came out like one of those years, and it was a whole new world as far as that type of hacking. And then you still had, at that point, you still had service level exploits and all kinds of cool stuff like that too. So I started looking into that, and I took a college course called Ethical Hacking and Network Defense. And my teacher was teaching it, and I would be that kid who was like, that's not really how it works in the real world. This is how real world people are doing it. And he's like, well, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, I just know, like, this is kind of stuff I'm interested in. And he took me aside after one class, and he said, hey, like, you can make a career out of this. There's this job called penetration testing, where you hack stuff and then you write a report about it, and they will pay you to do that because they want to fix their systems. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And so once I figured out that that was a career choice I had, I dove into offensive security, for the next, 12 years of my life. So that's kind of the origin story.
I believe, at that moment, I have a lot of questions. Then
Yeah.
we are going to start from the beginning, because you say, okay, one of the things you say something very interesting, is try to be more strong with your environment, and everything will change it. I agree totally with that words, because I believe sometimes it's happening like these kind of difficult moments. But one of the things always I try to explain to the people, it's important, try to find a good, we can say, try to find some mentors, right? Or maybe try to find a group of people doing the same are you doing at the time. You found that people on the internet, but I don't know if you in real life you have the chance to have some friends doing the same and stuff. Are you doing at the time?
Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I think one of the things is that, and I think you referenced it in the beginning of the line of questioning, but is the reason a lot of younger kids, fall into kind of the darker side of hacking or tech is because it's a very welcoming community. If you show that you have interest and skills, those communities, they don't care who you are, what you look like, where you're from. They care about your ability. And for a lot of us who, are smart kids, or we have ADHD, and like no one's ever really appreciated like the things that we were really passionate about. We are extra passionate about, and usually end up being very good at. And the things that we don't are not good at, we don't care about. So, and that was always me. And I just remember how welcoming some of those communities made you feel. And I think that's the same for a lot of kids these days. So one of my roles really recently, about 5 years ago, was the CISO of Ubisoft, which is a video game company. And a lot of the threat actors that we went up to, I mean, you classify them as threat actors, but really they're highly skilled and technical groups of teens, and or early 20s hackers, right? And they're very young, and they've managed to build these communities around hacking a game, or building a bot, or doing whatever. And that's their tribe that they found. So, that's probably the wrong way to do it, but there are other places that you can do it. You have so many like conferences nowadays, and places to find mentors. There's more out there than ever. I think that a lot of community right now is springing up on Discord channels, actually. So content creators who, like, myself or Nahamsek or John Hammond or some of those kind of people, right? They have Discord channels now where you can interact with, your favorite content creator or the community that supports them. And those places, we all have Discords. Those places are, good places to find a tribe that's doing stuff ethically, at least nowadays. I wish we would have had, I mean, we had a little bit of that with IRC, and ICQ back in the day, but it wasn't around like the ethical part of, like the testing and, the security skills. So yeah. And I do think that, like, at least for me, I feel like, a lot of the trauma I went through as a kid and, the part of finding my tribe, finding my friends, it was hard. And, but it definitely benefited me later along in life, because I had some resiliency, to understand that, like, hey, a lot of things in life don't move fast. Like, finding your best friends is not just going to drop in your lap. You have to, like, get out there. Finding a person to spend your life with is not just going to drop in your lap. You have to go be out there and work for it and put yourself in positions to succeed. And that's just like everything in life, right? Like, you have to, you may not succeed every time. You may succeed 1 out of 10 times, but you're never going to get what you want unless you put yourself in positions to be places where things happen. So that's something I learned from my dad. Actually, my dad taught me that. He said, he sat me down and he said, "Hey, you're never going to find your wife, your future wife." I think I was like 19 at the time, and he sat me and he says, "You're never going to find your future wife sitting in the basement." Right? He's like, you got to go out and do anything social, anything out in the world, and you will meet people, and then one of those people, whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's social events or whatever, that's going to be where you meet your person. And he was right. So kudos to him for that.
I don't know if your dad have the same the same feeling like my dad, but because my dad is Latino, and you can feel this. He's very passionate,
Yeah.
and one of the things when I feel, when I was younger, I spent like you many hours at front of the computer, many hours. At the beginning, there like many people doesn't understand this can be a job, this can give you a money, or most of the people think this guy is playing video games and you are wasting your time there. It's funny because today we are having a very good jobs,
Yeah.
but at that time it was, my dad's always saying to me like, "Hey, you need to do a real job. This is not a real job. This is a game," or something like that. And I don't know if you have the same the same.
I was lucky that my parents saw right away that computer skills, whatever I was doing on the computer, would eventually someday be valuable. So they weren't like, don't do the computer stuff. They were more just like, you have to, in addition, like, put yourself out there and get out of the house, right? And today it's a much more nuanced conversation as well, right? Because even with your example of gaming, right, and being a waste of time, that's not necessarily true anymore. You can be a streamer, you can be a professional esports person and make a great living, sometimes more than tech people. And so that's an avenue that's open to people these days that I think is fantastic. I think that video games, and the community around video games, especially since I worked at a video game company, I think that they can be amazing tools for youth, right? Um, I think that gone are the days where we label that as like a waste of time, right? Like, there's plenty of ways that if you were really passionate about games, you can monetize, videos on YouTube. You can join an esports team. There's a whole world of video game development and design, and there's the whole jobs that are not even technical but are video game roles, like level design and balance and this kind of stuff. And yeah, so these days kids have a lot of options, even if that's the thing that they want to do.
Reasons I make this question is like many people thinking like, stay at the front of the computer is not a job, but then you start your professional career.
Mhm.
And can you explain a little bit how was your professional career? Where do you start? Where do you where do you where bring you this career? Where you are now? You were saying this is my own company today. Okay, and you fail one. How do you say? Like 1 of the 10 is something like
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah,
And that's something you learn when you are creating your own business, right?
yeah.
Then from your starting point from where you start in cybersecurity, because at the beginning, I believe it's not very common to find a job as a cybersecurity professional or something like that. How do you find it, and how do you start your career there?
Yeah. So when I was around, or when I was starting, I took that college elective, right? So this is somewhere in my early 20s, and I think the only consultancies really back then were, I mean, the big consultancies were Loft, obviously. So some of the OG consultancies, Loft, In Guardians, there were NCC Group, the beginning of NCC Group was started way back then. And so there were consultancies starting to offer cybersecurity testing as a service, and that was cool. But there were none in my town, so I really started in IT first, learning. I started as help desk basically for Citrix, which had the product Go to My PC, which was a remote administration product. And so like I already knew computers from kind of like computer repair and like video games and just like general software and antivirus. I knew that kind of stuff. So very quickly I went from help desk to real IT, where I was, setting up servers. And my first kind of exposure as a job that had any security layer to it was endpoint protection at that point. So at one point we rolled out endpoint protection across the whole company, which back then was a really big deal. Make sure that, it wasn't even called endpoint protection back then, it was called antivirus. Making sure that all ran well and we were managing it and looking at alerts and re-imaging boxes that got viruses on them and stuff like that. That was my first exposure to defensive security. But all the while, there was a couple classes out there that were starting to become really popular. And the first version of the OSCP, the Offensive Security Certified Professional by OffSec, had come out by Mati Aroni, who is the original author of the OSCP training before it became like this big crazy company. And he came out with the first kind of big certification, and the only other one was SANS at the time too. SANS came out with their first web pen testing certification. But even back then, SANS was very expensive and OffSec was cheaper. And then a couple of forums had started to come up for ethical hackers to learn the trade. Like ethicalhacker.net was one back in the day, run by Don Donzel. So I immersed myself in all of that, and basically learned during the job while I was at Citrix on like how to do port scanning and how to do service exploitation. And I already knew some of the web stuff from the dark web kind of places I was. Then once I felt like I had a pretty good skill, there was one consultancy about 30 minutes away from Santa Barbara in Carpinteria, which is 30 minutes south of Santa Barbara. And there was a small consultancy there who randomly did this full time. Like they weren't even like an IT consultant shop. They were an actual penetration testing and security services shop. And they tested most of the banks in California, all of the credit unions, the smaller banks. And so it was called Redspin. And I applied there and met the team. And at that time, I was not the most technical person. The guys on the team, when I interviewed, were much more technical than me. But since web hacking was just coming out, they didn't know anything about web hacking. And so I was able to show some of the web hacking tricks that I knew in the interview. And so they were like, cool, you're now our web app person. And I was like, okay, like we'll figure it out. And so that team, turns out now all the people on that original Redspin team are like crazy people in the industry. I don't know what happened. I don't know why that place incubated some really, really cool people, but one is a head of security at LinkedIn right now. The other is a head of security at OpenAI. Another one is the head of is the CISO for the city of Los Angeles. So like they all went like really crazy places, and they were fantastic people. But the 3 years I spent there it really felt like 10 years. And just learning and hanging out. We played DEF CON CTF a couple of years. Some funny stories there. And that's where I learned a lot, was got my first foot in the door. But I had to sell myself, and I think that's the crux of kind of like anything. I teach a course right now on how to get your first job in cyber today, which is much different. But some of the tenets are very much still the same, and it's you have to convince people that, first of all, you're passionate about this and that you've put in the work and you have a good work ethic. I think those are the most important things to anybody looking to fill any position anywhere, but especially in this community. The first thing that people will do when you apply for a job these days is they'll Google you. And if they don't find that, you're doing hack the box, or you have, are trying to get your certs, or, whatever, you might go to the bottom of the resume pile, right? Because there's so many people who want this nowadays. It's such a bigger community. And so, when I tell people, in my class, it's like, you got to be able to sell yourself. You got to have a portfolio of work ready to show people, talk about your experience, be ready to volunteer, be ready to be in Discords to network, all that kind of stuff. So
that's a very interesting thing, because many people don't realize about how important it can be that. I believe today it's important part. Okay, you can be incredible hacker, and the people think, okay, my job talk about me, but you know what happened? Many people is doing many things around the world, and today we are really connected with everywhere. And you can see you have incredible hackers in Indonesia, in Thailand, in India, in South America, in every place of the world. And I believe also create a little bit of marketing about yourself and explain what are you doing. Create some white papers or some papers about what are you doing. If you are doing bug bounty or something like that, where the people know about you. And that's a very interesting tip, because I believe it's working today. And also, if you have the chance to write in LinkedIn, because these kind of things are finally, like, people know about you, as you mentioned before, like some people want to Google your name and see what are you doing today. And that brings me to the next question. Is like, from there, you something funny I want to say, like, your friends is working in a very incredible jobs and you are creating your own company. Why?
yeah. I mean, so for the longest time, I worked for other people. So I went from Redspin, I went to HP, where I worked with one of my really close friends, Daniel Miesler, and we built a hacking team there called Shadow Labs at HP. And that was really fun. At one point, we had 130 testers on our team, and Dan and I managed it all. We designed the methodology. We started off from like 4 people on that team, and grew like crazy. We learned so many things there, and then after there, I got very interested in bug bounty. That's where I met Casey. So I had met Casey at conferences and conversed with him on Twitter, and at that point, like, I felt like I was pretty high speed. Like, I felt like I had some good skills, but you don't really know when you work as a pen test consultancy how good you are compared to other people. And Bug Bounty, when it first came out and offered a leaderboard to kind of show you, like, how good are you compared to other people in the scene, that was what really drew me to it. And so Casey sent me an email and he's like, hey, we have this Bug Bounty thing. And back then it was just literally an email, like, from Casey. It says, I think I still have the first email, and it's like, hey, we're doing this thing called Bug Bounty. This company said it's okay to hack them from this day to this day. If you find anything, you get paid. If you don't find anything, you don't get paid. And if you find things, you get points on this leaderboard. And we have 100 other people participating. And so I had done CTFs in the past, and I was like, okay, like, let's see, how this goes. And once I started, I was hooked with the Bug Bounty. And I competed with several other really good hackers at the very beginning of Bug Bounty leaderboard. And I held the #1 position on BugCrowd for a year and a half solid, and made good money, made even more than the money, made really great contacts and friends, other hackers in the Bug Bounty community. But did that for a while. Then did a couple other jobs, and all the whole time, my buddy Daniel Miesler, who had become a friend, in that HB time, he kept on telling me, and a whole bunch of other people kept on telling me, said, you're really good at this. You should start your own company and do it the way you want to do it. And I was like, nah, I don't really want to do that. It seems like a lot of work, And then last year, we had started doing training on the side while I had a full-time job. And at one point, my wife came to me with a spreadsheet, and she said, hey, I've been running the numbers. And if you wanted to just do training, if you enjoy it, we could start our own business and do training, and we would make as much as you make right now as a full-time employed person. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool. And then she's like, if we add consulting on top of that, you'll probably make more. And I was like, okay. And so, uh, yeah, we started Arcanum, which the name of Arcanum is out of a fiction book that me and my wife both love. It's called Name of the Wind. And in this book, the Arcanum is the University of Magic. So to teach young kids how to do, how to do magic. And so we called our business Arcanum. And so we do a bunch of training and consulting now.
Thing I believe it's very interesting. We can talk here. It's like, you said, I don't know why early in my company, we was a group of people, very talented professionals of contesting about that. But finally, I believe hacking is based on experience, right? If you hack more, you're going to find more bugs. You want to be better. You're going to improve your abilities and everything. And that's why, I believe also something you mentioned, I believe it is important, like how you increase your skills, right? And I believe there bug bounty can be very interesting, right? And one of the things I want to bring this to this conversation, because you had a very interesting talk in DEFCON 32 talking about the dark side of bug bounty, and we can say it can be a little bit controversial. We was talking with Casey in the last episode, but one of the things, if someone want to know about this talk, can go to YouTube. You can check in the Jason DEFCON 32, and then you have it. But one of the things I want to get from your point, because one of the things I'm feeling like many people is feeling like how I can say, like very frustrated because doesn't find nothing, or the triage is duplicated or something like that. Something you want.
Yep.
Good playground where you can practice and you can learn your tactics. If you get it from that point of view, it's positive. You don't get the point of only for the money. But I want to know from someone like you, because we can say about bounty and about cybersecurity and something like that. Then what do you believe after everything is happening and everything is running around? Because every day we have new bug bounty companies. You have integrity. You have HackerOne. We have a lot, right? And what do you believe will be the future of bug bounty?
Um, okay, so just to preface that talk, right? Like the talk that I did at DEF CON last year was called The Dark Side of Bug Bounty. And I just exposed, some frustrations and some things. And the reason I was qualified to give that talk is because I have worked on every side of bug bounty. I have been a hacker for my whole career since bug bounty started. And then I worked at BugCrowd as the head of triage for 3 years and then an executive at that company. And then also, I have run a bug bounty for a company, for several companies, Ubisoft being one of biggest ones, right? So I had a lot of experience on every side of the equation for bug bounty, and I wanted to get that talk out there just to talk about. There are some what I would call inequities in the bug bounty equation. Now, does that mean I don't believe in bug bounty? No, I think that bug bounty for organizations is one of the best ways to get security testing at scale for your external based applications. I think that you can bring in some of the best talent in the world for pennies on the dollar of what you would pay for the type of bugs they produce. So, a lot of times when you're a CISO, and I have been a CISO for the last 5 years or 6 years actually, when you're a CISO, you look at total breach cost. If your organization gets breached, and it can be like even for an innocuous bug, it can be starting in the millions of dollars for your organization. If you look at everything like downtime of your application, cost to fix, reputational damage, all of this stuff, it could easily add up to $1 million or more. Some of the biggest ransomware events are way more than $1 million. It can be in the 20 millions of dollars or something like that, right? So scaling your testing and finding those issues using bug bounty and paying 5K, for critical is pennies on the dollar compared to the breach costs. So I believe in bug bounty. I think that's what happened. I think that what's happened in bug bounty is that and I'll just be honest, right? Like I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I know Casey was, coming on here less as well, but I just think that these companies, the bug bounty platforms that host all these bug bounties, have just moved away from a researcher first mindset, right? And they moved away from it for several reasons. It's not just corporate, we want to make more money and we're always on the client side. That's actually not how like a lot of them operate at all. It's because of the scale of now how many programs they're running, how many triagers they have, what the quality of triage, what the speed of triage needs to be, in order to keep up with so many people contributing to these things, and then the massive amount of submissions that get submitted to any bug bounty. So at least when I was there, I think it's yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but something I was saying with Casey, this is important because sometimes you are in the middle, right? You are the man of the middle, and that's very complicated because same you are going to mention now. It's like you are getting a lot of messages, a lot of a lot of reports, and be in the side of in the middle side. It's always complicated, That's only I was saying to Casey that because I don't believe that the problem is the platform, I believe many times it's difficult to handle with the customers and handle with the point of view of the pen tester, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's great. Yeah, I think that the scale is one thing. You also have sometimes, I think I talked about it in that talk, but the customers themselves don't understand the core, what I call agreement in bug bounty, right? And Casey, I take this from Casey. When I started at Bug Crowd, the rule was touch the code, pay the bug. That was like our underlying motto, right? So, if you're going to fix a thing, then obviously it mattered enough to you that you should pay the researcher something for it, right? And these days, I think a lot of customers don't understand that core level agreement of bug bounty. And so you'll see a lot of researchers who will submit something, it'll get, mistriaged or not triaged or NA'd or whatever. But then the customer, definitely felt like it was important enough to fix. They'll fix, whatever it was, and then the researcher feels frustrated. And then there's also a lot of times when there's just triage issues as to like how to rate non-standard bugs. I mean, I feel like most of the platforms are really great at rating stuff that is easy, like SQL injection, cross-site scripting. Like those are very easy to triage bugs most of the time, and they have a defined payout range, and you pay them out. But like I saw on Twitter today, um, or on X, I guess, whatever we call it now, a bug hunter reporting that, he had found a way to enumerate, like 16,000 emails of customers that belonged to HackerOne or something like that. And they NA'd the bug and said there was no security risk. And I was like, wow, like I was thinking like, if that happened to me, now I'm just seeing the researcher's part of it. I don't know exactly how he did it, whatever. But if that was, me at a private security, bug bounty and wasn't using a platform, that would probably be pretty eligible. Or I know someone really recently who was talking about de-anonymizing the triage staff at a company, right? Being able to find out the real names of the triagers on the platform, which, puts their safety at risk. And that one got NA'd too. So these, information disclosure bugs, can be hard to triage, and they create, sometimes mistakes or, sometimes miscommunication. That's also a crux of the bug bounty world, is like communication has to happen more than I think it's happening right now. I think that because of the scale of how many submissions that any program gets, there's not enough communication going on between the program owner and the bug hunters and the triagers and the bug hunters to explain why things are the way they are. So as far as the future of bug bounty goes, I think it's still going to be bright. I think that crowdsourcing security is going to get even more, is going to grow into even more than just this vulnerability finding kind of stuff we're doing right now. When I was at Bug Crowd, one of the things I talked to Casey a lot about is that scaling security work like this, it doesn't just work in offense, it can work in defense too. And so I think that you'll see a lot of platforms pivoting to be holistic platforms, adding, secure coding work, threat hunting, detection engineering, stuff like that to the crowdsourced model. And I'm hoping to see that because defense needs all the help it can get.
a similar point of view. I believe maybe for the experience we have but when I was listening your speaking, like it was similar to my perception. But anyway, I believe in the same point of view we are talking before. It's like I believe bug bounty is interesting when you are starting your career, because I can give you one example. When you come from Try Hack Me or Hack the Box or one of those platforms, you never have possibility to fight against one web application firewall, like this is put you on your side, right? When
Yeah.
when you need to fight against to F5 or Cloudflare or something like that, it's very, very different, right? And maybe you believe you are the best hacker of the world, but when you arrive to that point, it can be interesting. That's moved me to the next question. Is like, what's your opinion today about because we are talking before about, okay, how you can find your first job and how the companies today are hiring, because for me also it's important the soft skills when you're hiring someone, because if someone have attitude can learn. But what do you believe about the certifications today? Because at the beginning you mentioned like OSCP, but today we have a ton of certification. What is your point of view about that? Do you believe it's important to find a job, or is like,
I mean, I know from real world scenarios of hiring people recently, certifications do matter, but not as much as people think. I think that a certification, if you're going through the general flow of, if you're going through the general flow of submitting your resume to a whole bunch of job sites, certification matters to get you out of the initial resume pile and into the interview pile. Now, I think that there are so many certifications now, and I think that it's less about having the cert on the interview. Like, I don't, if I see somebody with an OSCP or SANS cert, I'm like, good for them, right? But that doesn't factor in to me accepting that they know how to do the job, right? Which is why I feel like bug bounty is a cool way to show that you know how to do the job, especially if you're a web tester, right? And you found bugs on, like you said, like really hardened targets. So I think that bug bounty can be a way to show that you have those chops as well. I think most places these days, most big consultancies and even small companies that you would interview at to get a security role have some sort of practical now. We call a practical test. And so you may have your OSCP, but they're going to give you their own practical anyway when you apply, which could be an app that they've made, and they want you not only to hack the app that they made, but also write a report for it. And so you said soft skills, right? And I think writing is the most undersold skill that you need to have as a pen tester if you want to get a job as a pen tester or offensive security person or whatever. Like half your job is writing reports. It's just half hacking and half writing. So yeah, I think that the certs are definitely ways to get you in front of some other people, but do they take you all the way? No. What is my current opinion on which certs are worthwhile? I don't know. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. SANS definitely gets you in the military world. So in the US, if you have a SANS certificate in one of their tracks, like the GPEN or whatever, you're pre-qualified for like a certain level of job title in the military or in the DoD world because you have that certification. So SANS being accepted as that kind of certification value is really good if you're trying to be a pen tester for the DoD or the military or the NSA or whatever. OffSec is still really respected by a lot of people who are consultancies, but they've gone through some changes recently, an acquisition, and we'll see if the quality of that training remains high. I know they redid OSCP, into 2 different versions last year, and then they reoriented the test 3 years ago. So we'll see what the quality remains for the OffSec, but there are a whole bunch of new players too. If I see a cert that I don't know about, I actually ask about it in the interview process. So there's a bunch of blue team certs, companies who are trying to do really cool stuff like OffSec, but in the blue team world, and they're not as well known yet. And I see them on resumes, and I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Tell me about the certification process. Tell me about the training attached to the certification process. Tell me what tools you learned in that process. Tell me about the practical you had to take. And so I'll learn about those certs from the applicant sometimes. And some of them are really cool. Like some of the newer defensive based ones are really cool. So I wouldn't over-index on certifications. I'd over-index on learning skills and being able to tell the person you're talking to when you finally do get the interview what your skills are. I think that that's the part I would focus on.
Jason, one of the things I believe is interesting from the perspective from where, when you are bringing some certification, at least when you are handling hiring processes, at least this is like a driver license, right? It's like, it's saying to you, like, that person knows something, right? And when you need to hire someone, like, at least bring you this. But one of the things that you mentioned, like, I believe is interesting, is you was talking about OSCP. And one of the things I try to explain to the people when it comes to me, hey, Albert, where I can start, where I can start today, because the last 20 years cybersecurity changed a lot. And one of the things I always try to explain to the people is maybe you need to learn about how to hack APIs or how to hack web applications, because you come from the past, from the web applications, but not many people know about how to hack web applications. Then if you want to, if you need to create some learning path from your perspective, what do you believe can be interesting? And I know you have a school, and we are moving to that point later. Don't be worried about that.
It's fine. Let me bring it up real quick just so that I can remember, because I refreshed the course with new certs and stuff right now, but I'm happy. I usually give this as a workshop for free at conferences, this part of the training, so it's not a problem for me to talk about it or give it away or anything like that. So we run this course called Hacking Your Career, which we talk exclusively about how to get a job in cyber today. In the first part of that class, I go over, like, okay, well, let's say you have no money. Like, you have no money to invest in your career right now. Like, what do you go do if you want to be a blue teamer and put some stuff on your resume, right? And which ones offer free certificates if you finish these resources? So in the blue team world, in the free resources section, there's a company called Picus, which has a purple team academy, which includes a whole bunch of threat hunting and DFIR training for free. And it offers a certification when you finish it. There's Blue Team Security, which is a company. They also have several free courses that offer certifications. If you're going to be in the blue team world, you want to research kind of what the most popular SIMs are. So in this day and age, it's Splunk. Splunk has a free training academy and certification program that you can use, or that you can take and get certified in using Splunk. And then Google has its cybersecurity professional certificate, which covers not just blue teaming, but red teaming. It covers the whole gamut of cybersecurity. They start it every quarter, and it has a certificate program. It's 21 hours or somewhere between 15 and 21 hours per module, and they have like 9 modules. And if you finish all of those, you get a Google certificate. Those are all absolutely free for blue teamers. Then you have TryHackMe has several certifications that you can get in micro classes. You have Class Central, Let's Defend, and Attack IQ. All have blue team free certifications that you can go. So if you had nothing, like, you could go take those, get those certs, put them on your resume, and that would be a pretty big body of work for me as an employer to look at and be like, okay, this person's hustling, right? Like, they really want this. They're out there getting certified in all these things. They're putting in the extra work. I know they don't have any practical experience, and they didn't have the money probably to pay for one of the big certification bodies, courses or whatever. But I can see that they're putting in work here. So that's the blue team side. In the blue team side, I also have a cheap section. So John Strand and Anti-Siphon Training do several pay what you can courses as part of Anti-Siphon. So John's SOC core skills class is wonderful. TCM Security has several cheaper blue team courses coming out these days that are micro trainings, which are good. And then the expensive ones are obviously SANS, and OffSec now has a blue team OS. I can't remember, is it OSDA, or I can't remember what their blue team certification is, but and then Hack the Box has a decently expensive track to complete the whole thing. They have a SOC analyst track and a DFIR track, and then a new company that's out there now is called Cyber Defenders is starting to be recognized as like a certification body for blue teamers. So that's blue teamers. Now, red teamers, do you want free resources? I'm going to rattle these off quick.
Wait a second, Jason. If we don't forget, we will put the links on the description below.
Cool. Yeah. No worries. Yeah. Okay. So that's blue teaming. Now, red teaming. Pentester Lab, absolutely free and offers certifications through their academy. TryHackMe has several free courses in the red teaming kind of world that you can take now. Not the upper echelon of TryHackMe courses. They're not all available for free and to get a cert, but some of the lower ones are. You already mentioned API Sec University is absolutely a skill set you should be adding to your red team arsenal. Hacking modern web applications involves a lot of REST API hacking and GraphQL hacking. And so API Sec University is an absolutely free course that you can go through related to the book Hacking APIs by Corey Ball. And you can get a certification when you finish that training. Hack the Box has some stuff. And then it doesn't offer a certificate, but by far the best training in the red teaming for web hacking is Web Security Academy by Portswigger. It is by far the most complete body of knowledge on hacking web applications. It's absolutely free to sign up, use their labs, and go through all the scenarios. And they don't have a cert that you get at the end, but now they do have the burp certified professional certificate, which is starting to get recognized a little bit, where you can certify and say, I know Burp Suite, the tool that most of us use in web hacking. And so that's a thing that you can go for. So those are the free ones. I also recommend that when people are doing this, they look up a project called the OWASP Vulnerable Web Applications Directory Project. So a lot of purposely vulnerable apps get released by security professionals to train people. Like WebGoat was the first one that came out, but now very popular these days is Juice Shop, Damn Vulnerable, anything Damn Vulnerable. New ones come out all the time. Yeah, Crappy, yeah, all these things, right? So this project hosted by OWASP tries to track those purposely vulnerable web apps. Now, these don't offer certificates, right? But when I see them on resumes and people have stood up 4 or 5 of these things, that shows that they're passionate about this, that they have a great work ethic, they're putting in time to learn the topics. And if they've done blogging about how they solve the challenges for those things, how they stood up the infrastructure, it's really impressive to me when I see that. So that's the free section. The cheap section, again, Anti-Siphon has a pay what you can introduction to pen testing course. Again, TCM is kind of that middle tier as well. They have plenty of offensive security courses, micro trainings for red teamers and pen testers. If you're more into bug bounty, you have Nahamsec and his training platform, which is called, I'm blanking on the name right now. Hacking Hub. Yeah. And they have training, which is really good as well. And then the higher tier, the expensive tier of red team certification is obviously SANS being the most expensive, but like I said, recognized worldwide. OffSec, still pretty recognized, has several red teaming courses all the way up to exploit development now. So not just pen testing, but they have the Pen 200, Web 200, and exploits 401, whatever. So they have a bunch of courses now, and they're still pretty recognized. If you know that you don't want to do just pen testing, you actually want to do red teaming, which is different. A lot of people confuse that. Red teaming is different. The leader in the space for certification, bar none, for red teaming, other than SANS, is 0 point security. Most red teams require you to come with your red team ops certification done to do red team work. And that course is structured much different than a general pen testing course. You have to develop malware, you have to develop an implant, you have to know a modern C2, and so it's a little bit different. So 0 point security has some stuff, but they're in that $400 range for their trainings, and there's 2 of them, Red Team Ops and Red Team Ops 2, which combined can come out to like about $1,000. And then lastly, you have very specific trainings for very specific things. So Altered Security is probably considered one of the best trainers on Active Directory ish type of hacking. They're the former crew around Vivek's old company, SecurityTube, the training arm there. They went and started their own company called Altered Security. Zintra is one of the best trainings for hacking the Azure ecosystem in the cloud. Red Siege is a really great company that does red teaming specific training. Sector, if you want to develop offensive-based malware. Burp Suite, Mastering Burp Suite Pro by Agari, if you want to get the most comprehensive training for Burp Suite, and then our class, the Bug Hunters Methodology Live, if you're going to be in that bug bounty world or that kind of cutting edge web hacking world. We teach, cutting edge tactics that, real world web hackers do today. Probably one of the best web hacking classes on the net. So that's all of them. Rattled them off.
I want to add two more.
Sure.
I want to add two more because I believe like it can be interesting. One extra one, it's from Hack Tricks for my friend Carlos Polov. He did Arte for hacking AWS and cloud because I believe it's interesting.
Yeah.
And the next one, I have two last questions. The first one is, can you explain? We are talking a lot of many schools and many training camps, but we want to know a little bit about your what you created and what you have already. And the last question I want to make before to close this is, I want to know about your tool, ChatGPT, or what are you doing with artificial intelligence for fantasy? Okay, first of all, explain to us what are you doing in your company, a little bit more training and about that.
Yeah. So I specialize in, kind of modern web hacking and bug bounty work. So the first class we released was our class called the Bug Hunters Methodology. It was a live class that you took with me over 2 days, and then it grew to 3 days. And it's got a whole bunch of modules in it. The first day is focused on reconnaissance, which for a lot of bug bounty programs is really important if it's a wide scope program, finding all of the assets in order to hack the right ones. And then the second day is all about, we call it application analysis. And so it's, a lot of times you'll take one of these trainings, especially, some of the free ones, and they'll give you CTF or labs to do, right? And so you'll finish those labs, you're like, cool, I understand the vulnerability. And then you'll go work for a job that you get, like a pen testing job, or you'll go on a bug bounty hunt. And half of the thing is that you also need to find where the vulnerabilities are, right? That's half of the skill set that you need in real testing for money. And none of those labs teach you that at all, right? Because they point you to a form and they're like, there's a vulnerability here, here's some training, and exploit it, and you can do that. But where many testers fall apart is when they're given a project and be like, okay, hack Tesla or hack Walmart or hack whatever, right? And they're like, okay, this is a enterprise level application with hundreds of parameters, with sub applications built inside it and chatbots, and they have 3 APIs that do different things, and like, you're like, well, where do I look for the vulnerabilities that I know how to exploit now? And so we teach that in Bug Hunters methodology, where the different types of exploits exist most commonly in applications. And then we have modules on vulnerabilities. We're not teaching you the introduction stuff of like how to exploit SQL injection. We're giving you tools and techniques and pro tips in each section of like SQL injection. We're talking about, okay, well, where does it most commonly exist today? Why does it exist? Because of what frameworks, because of what mistakes, what tools can automatically exploit it? Which ones work, which ones don't work these days? All those types of things. So that's our Bug Hunters class. It's now, we just changed it to be, instead of live, it is now you can just pay and take it by video. We just did that last week, so you don't have to be on my time zone or anything. You could just purchase it. But we plan to update it with new modules every quarter like we did the old class. So that was our first class that we ran, highly successful. People love it. And it really does give a methodology to real testing, because that has been my love for the last 20 years. So I put a lot of passion into that course. The next one that we did was called Red Blue Purple AI. And so about 4 years ago, when ChatGPT 4 came out, or 3.5 was the big one that kind of made a big splash, immediately I started building a course on how to use it for security professionals. So let's say you're on a small team and you want to scale your work and be able to do more with AI. I go through the red team domain, the blue team domain, and the purple team domain, and I give examples of how to use current gen AI to help scale yourself as a person, or your business if you have a small security team, or just make things better. So that's a 2-day course on breaking that down. And then our newest course that we built is attacking AI. And so as more of these AI enabled systems end up out there, you are now, pen testers are now being asked to assess them. Now there's been years of assessment, in quotes, on these systems, but it's mostly on the models and not how they are implemented these days on real enterprise applications. So a lot of people, it's the same thing in AI, is a lot of people will learn how to do some prompt injection on a chatbot, right? And really, systems are so much more complex than that in the real world. And so we teach a methodology that we made on attacking AI-based systems in that course, which is it is cutting edge. I mean, like, some of the biggest model vendors are sending people to take our class these days. OpenAI has sent people to take our class. Anthropic has sent people to take our class. So we really like that one right now. And that's I feel like you're a pen tester or someone, and you think that you're going to be asked to assess, one of those systems at some point. So those are our 3 flagship courses. We have 2 micro courses that we're working on right now. We just released one called Hacking Your Career, which is where this content came from, the education list of certifications that you can get. So this is the beginning of that. And then we talk about how to interview, how to network, how to find jobs that are not just on LinkedIn or some of the job platforms. We talk about how to negotiate salary. We talk about, furthering your career once you have it. So that course is called Hacking Your Career. That one's available now. We just launched it last week, version 2.0. And then we have one in the works right now, but it's not quite finished, which is interception proxies. So we have a class that's going to go over training people from start to finish on using Burp Suite, Kaido, and Fiddler for different use cases, and what the best plugins are, what some tips and tricks are, and that'll be a micro class that we'll release probably later in the year, I think. So those are our offerings right now.
Support to Kaido because it's a small team, and Emilio's incredible person. He was here in the podcast, and like what he's creating at that time, it can be very difficult for the people to understand, because most of the people was using Burp Suite, and some guy in somewhere in Canada say, I want to create my my own application and full support. But also talking about that, about hacking artificial intelligence and hacking APIs and everything, that's where appears your tool, right? That tool you created for your pen testing for GPT. Yeah, can you?
Yeah. So OpenAI has this thing called the GPT market. And what you can do is, once you have access to ChatGPT, you can create your own GPT. I call them bots. I just call them little bots. And the abilities that you have when you're building a bot is to design a system prompt, to give the bot like a persona and a task or whatever. And then now in the modern version, you can upload data like documents for them to pull information from, and you can set configurations for them and stuff like that. So you can make a bot and be a bot creator on this GPT marketplace. One of the first bots that we released, back then we called it like Set GPT, but we've renamed it to Arcanum cybersecurity bot. But it is like my research in the best way to do prompt engineering and configuration for a general security helper. So you can think of it as your ride-along buddy. I keep it open all day in a tab, and I keep Arcanum cybersecurity bot open, and I just ask it questions about things that I'm maybe not an expert in. Right? It's actually one of the most painful points when you're a noob, when you're first getting started in pen testing or web testing or whatever, or bug bounty. It's like, no one knows everything. Even me. I've been doing this 20 years, and you're just never going to know everything. And it's really nice to have this bot open that is custom trained for our domain, cybersecurity, and basically ask it those noob questions that you don't want to ask the senior on your team, because he's going to get annoyed with you in Slack, right? Like, and so Arcanum cybersecurity bot, I think we have over like 500 or 600 reviews. We're one of the most cited cybersecurity bots in the GPT store. And the way I built that was in that red, blue, purple AI class. I have a methodology for building a really great system prompt. It's probably one of the best in the world. And that's how I built that cybersecurity bot and published it. So that's a general one. But if you go to our webpage at arcanum-sec.com, we have a whole set of bots we released this year. I think we have 10 now, and we're working on 10 more. And they're all over the place. So there's the general Arcanum one, which I use for everything. There's Yara rule bots. There's all kinds of defensive tools. We've made specific bots that people can interact with and ask questions to for that tool. So we've got a bunch of stuff on the website if you want to check out some of our free resources. They're absolutely free to use.
One big friend of mine, he created a 0-day AI. He's a AI bot, incredible. It was totally uncensored. Have interaction with Nuclei, have interaction with SQL map, and he's a Spanish guy, and this app tool was incredible. But one of the things today also include Kaido is AI interaction, right? And that's what brings me to the next question. I believe the last one, like, many people are saying, okay, with the AI, the people, we don't need more pen testers or something like that because AI can do everything. What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, so I feel like there will be a lot of automation that'll be brought to the pen tester workflow that'll help pen testers work faster, which I do believe will cut down on it won't cut down, it'll just move the bar higher for, what you need to know in order to be effective to be as a pen tester, right? So right now, if you're just a general pen tester, you need some Active Directory knowledge, some web hacking knowledge. Like maybe you have a cert or two. You have to know how to scan things and write a report and do some manual testing. I think some of that will be displaced, but at least from what I see a lot of times, um, attackers or anybody in the offensive space, a lot of these things rely on creativity. And so you're going to get automation of the stuff we know out of the bots, but creating new attack methods, finding new misconfigurations, these type of things will still need to be done by humans, at least for the time being. Where I think we will scale faster because it's not always creative work, but more scale work is on the defensive side. I've seen some really cool MCP servers really recently that interact with like your Splunk logs or your cloud-based logs, and you can just ask natural language questions to your logs, and that is going to be a game changer for the blue team side. But I think the red team side, it will disrupt a little bit of the bottom level roles, but I think that it will have you'll still have pen testers, highly qualified pen testers and medium skill pen testers still employed. I don't think it's gonna, especially with the boom of AI coding too. There's going to be so many vulnerabilities out there. I don't think our job security has quite gone away yet. I don't see it going away completely in the next even 3 to 5 years. But we'll see. It's all up in the air right now.
Something I try to explain to the people are the same fast movement we have as pen testers, like cyber criminals is moving with ChatGPT and other tools faster than us. Because one of the things I was, when we have data leaks on these kind of things, the people believe like, oh, what the criminals going to do with that? How easy is like use this data to improve your AI and maybe find bugs in other places where you find or try to do something that kind of stuff. And something I was checking one video on YouTube like a few days ago is someone is using AI to find bugs and not find bugs, like fix vulnerabilities, we can say, but this vulnerability doesn't have CVS or CCE or something like that. Okay, it's not published, only fixed. He tried to find this vulnerability and try to find the exploitation and use it with AI. Because not many people is taking care about this vulnerability because maybe it was fixed in, we can say in Java, but maybe you can have the same issue in other language. That can be interesting. And I know some criminals are creating these kind of bots to do that. Then at same movement or so fast we are moving, the criminals are moving faster, creating a new bots, new everything. That same you mentioned before, like I believe we have job at least for 5 years more.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation. Being at the cutting edge of the bug bounty hunting scene and knowing a lot of really fantastic hackers in that scene, we actually see, at least in the web field, at like bad guys using our tools a lot of the time, because we're moving the needle when it comes to releasing tooling and methodologies for modern web hacking. Now, when it comes to exploits and designing that kind of stuff, there are a lot of companies and startups that are releasing right now. There's a bunch of tools as well, releasing to help aid like AI assisted exploit development, plugins to Ghidra, and plugins to IDA Pro, and plugins to LLDB and Binary Ninja, and all the tools you would use to do reverse engineering, debugging, everything like that. So I'm sure the bad guys are doing a lot of cool stuff. I know specifically some threat actors I've seen using AI to enable their credential stuffing campaigns. So taking lists of currently breached passwords and running AI-based rule sets over them to modify them, to change like year numbers or add special characters, and we've been doing this with other tools in the red teaming world for quite a while, but AI is really good at it. And so I know bad guys are doing that to help their campaigns for credential stuffing, as well as building way more convincing spear phishing campaigns with AI. Also finding some, I don't think they're fully automated yet. I haven't seen anyone, whether it's in the ethical phase or the unethical realm, like fully nuts to bolts building exploits from scratch. There hasn't been a ton of non-lab based environment that's happened in, but we're getting there. Part of the class in Red, Blue, Purple AI, we talk about the very cutting edge of this work, at least from the ethical side. And that's happening at DEF CON right now with the AI XCC competition run by the DoD here in the States. And the teams that are competing in that this year at DEF CON, it's the grand finals this year, are going to win like millions of dollars. And those systems are some of the most impressive systems I've seen, which will basically go from a source code repository to finding a vulnerability, building an exploit, testing the exploit that actually works, scaling the scanning technology for the exploit, patching the server. And so that's the whole competition, is can you build a system that does all of that automatically enabled by AI? And so there are 6, highly specialized research universities and a couple consultancies in that competition who have that capability right now. So we're getting to some stuff, but that's the cutting edge right now. And not a lot of people are at it yet. A lot of people are doing AI aided stuff, but not totally automated yet. Yeah, Expo, yeah. Yeah, Expo is one of the companies I mentioned in my slides. They have I think they said they've done 80% of the WebSec Academy labs, and they're able to automate it. The problem is that those are still labs, and then they built custom labs that shouldn't represent anything in the data training. Like, so the problem is you have companies like that, like Expo, who come out and they say, oh, we can do 80% of the Portswigger WebSec Academy labs. But millions of people have blogged about those labs, or done GitHub repos on the solutions. So the training data will include solutions to those labs, which makes that research a little bit meh. So their second round of research, they built their own labs to benchmark against, and they did pretty well there too. Google has Project Naptime and Project Big Sleep, which were instances of them doing this to try to automate pen testing workflows. But nobody's completely there. There's a bunch of companies trying to get there, but these have to work like you and I were talking about, against enterprise grade systems, right? It can't just work against the CTF. So there's been other approaches to CVE discovery with hybrid dynamic and static analysis of an app, which have shown promise really recently, aided by AI. It's moving so fast. Even I, who am in it, like I am like at the cutting edge, sometimes miss stuff. So it is it's a cool place to be right now, to be in that space. Yeah.
Also, we can talk hours about that, but I believe we are running out of time. Because thank you very much for your time, Jason, and again, thank you very much for Casey for being you here, and I hope to see you someday and have a hack and eat some tacos in somewhere.
All right, sounds good.
And maybe if you come to Madrid, I will bring you to eat some paella.
It's on my list for sure.
Okay, my man. Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.
Awesome.